Hi everyone. Toxic people can exist anywhere, at work, in your family, even among your closest friends. They criticize you, manipulate your emotions, drain your energy, and make you question your own worth. But the truth is, they only have as much power as you allow them to have. No one can make you feel small unless you give them permission to. Storms come into everyone's life, but when the wind gets strong, a weak tree gets uprooted, while a strong tree may bend, but it never breaks. Be that strong tree. Bend if you must, but never fall. My name is Muniba, and I am motivational speaker. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe and like this video. Start a new journey with me. Now move on to topic. There comes a time in everyone's life when silence becomes our only language, when speaking up feels like screaming into a void. And in the presence of toxic people, this silence is often misunderstood, misused, and mistaken for weakness. You see, toxic people are not just loud in their words, they are loud in their intentions. They speak in manipulation, in blame, in gaslighting. And when you're someone who leads with empathy, with patience, with kindness, silence becomes your refuge. You go quiet because the chaos is too loud. You stay calm because you're exhausted from the emotional warfare. You don't respond not because you don't have the words, but because you've learned that no explanation is ever enough for someone committed to misunderstanding you. Silence is not surrender. Sometimes silence is survival. I remember sitting across from people who hurt me deeply, watching them twist narratives, play victim, mock my sensitivity, and I stayed silent. Not because I agreed, but because I had nothing to prove anymore. I was tired of defending my intentions to someone who was never listening to begin with. And in that silence, I found something I never expected: clarity. Because when you step back, when you don't argue, when you don't chase validation, you begin to see things as they are. The person you're trying to please doesn't lack understanding, they lack accountability. The apologies you're waiting for may never come, not because you're unworthy of them, but because they don't have the courage to look in the mirror. That's not your flaw, that's their fear. Toxic people thrive on reaction. They thrive when you're trying to explain, defend, justify. Your silence unnerves them because it takes away their power. It reflects their behavior back to them. And for the first time, they are left to deal with their own noise. But I'll say this gently: silence should not come at the cost of your self-worth. Don't let your silence become self-blame. Just because you chose not to fight doesn't mean you're lost. You chose peace over performance. You chose your sanity over shouting. You chose dignity over damage. And that's not weakness, that's wisdom. So the next time someone calls you cold for being quiet, remember, still water runs deep. And a person who chooses not to react when they could is not fragile. They are fiercely in control. In the battlefield of toxicity, silence is not your weakness. It is your shield. Have you ever felt like you're constantly shrinking yourself just to make others comfortable? That you're always saying yes when your soul is screaming no? That you're giving more than you even have and still being told it's not enough? Is what it feels like to love or live around toxic people. They don't just take your time. They take your energy. They take your light. And they do it so slowly, so cleverly, that you don't even notice. Until you're completely burned out, standing in the ashes of your own kindness. You try to be the peacekeeper, the fixer, the healer. You give excuses for their behavior. Maybe they're just going through something. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it's my fault. But let me ask you, how many times will you let someone walk through your heart with dirty feet before you realize that your compassion is being weaponized? You don't have to suffer just to be seen as nice. You don't have to tolerate abuse just to prove you're strong. And you do not have to set yourself on fire just to keep others warm. This is not love. This is emotional slavery dressed up as sacrifice. I know we're taught that endurance is a virtue. Especially as women, we're told, be patient, be quiet, don't disrupt, adjust. But adjusting to pain that isn't yours to carry, that's not strength. That's self-abandonment. And there is nothing noble about betraying yourself for people who would never lift a finger for you. Every time you suppress your truth to avoid a toxic reaction, you are sending a message to yourself. My peace doesn't matter. My needs are too much. My boundaries are negotiable. No, they are not. Your boundaries are not a betrayal. They are a declaration. I will no longer bleed for people who wouldn't even give me a bandage. You have the right to protect your energy, to say, this is not okay, to walk away from people who make you question your worth. Toxic people often paint your strength as selfishness. They will call your boundaries rude, your independence, ego, your distance, attitude. But don't let that guilt trap you. You are not here to please everyone. You are here to live honestly, gravely. It's okay to say no. It's okay to rest. It's okay to choose yourself. Because the people who truly love you will never ask you to burn just to keep them warm. They will bring their own light. They will respect yours. And together you will glow, not as martyrs, but as equals. There comes a time in every soul's journey when we must confront a heartbreaking truth. Some people, some places, and some patterns are not meant to be healed, they are meant to be left behind. You see, we all crave healing. We want to feel whole. We want to mend what was broken, fix what was wounded. But here's the bitter pill no one tells you. You cannot heal in the same environment that broke you. How can a flower bloom if the soil is poisoned? How can a bird learn to fly if its wings are clipped every time it tries? How can you grow when the very ground beneath you keeps pulling you back into pain? Toxic people have a way of making you doubt your reality. They minimize your pain, twist your words, and make you feel guilty for even having feelings. They will make you feel like you are the problem, and when you finally gather the courage to walk away, they will call you the villain for choosing peace. It's emotional warfare. And the worst part? It often comes from the people you love the most. But let me remind you gently, with all the love in my heart, you are not here to live in survival mode. You are here to breathe deeply, laugh freely, and walk unburdened by the weight of those who refuse to grow with you. Staying in a toxic environment because you hope it will change is like staying in a burning house because you love the furniture. You deserve better. I know it's hard. I know it hurts. I know leaving feels like tearing a part of yourself out of a place it's grown roots in. But healing demands space. Space to reflect, space to breathe, space to hear your own voice again, without it being drowned out by judgment, manipulation, or shame. Sometimes the most powerful form of self-love is distance. You don't need their permission to choose yourself. You don't need their understanding to validate your healing, and you certainly don't need to feel guilty for walking away from what is destroying you. Because when you finally step out of that toxic environment, when you finally remove yourself from the emotional battlefield, you begin to see clearly. You begin to feel again. You begin to reclaim the parts of you that were buried under years of fear, silence, and people-pleasing. And in that sacred space you create by walking away, healing begins. Not loudly, not all at once, but quietly, slowly, gently, like sunlight touching a face that has only known shadows, like your own voice whispering, "You made it. You're safe now." There is a unique pain that comes from being a light in a room full of shadows. When your heart is kind, your spirit gentle, and your intentions pure, toxic people see that as an invitation, not to cherish you, but to exploit your warmth. And often they do it so subtly, so silently, that you don't even realize what's happening. They make you question your laughter. They make you second guess your strength. They throw shade over your brightness and call it just being honest. Slowly, you begin to shrink yourself just to fit into the spaces they've created for you. Spaces where your light is too loud, too much, too bright. But let me tell you this, your light is not too much. Your joy is not excessive. Your softness is not a weakness. Your capacity to love deeply is not a flaw. The problem is not your brightness. The problem is that it makes others uncomfortable with their darkness. Toxic people often operate in fear and insecurity. And when they see you shining despite your scars, smiling through your storms, growing despite being broken, it threatens them. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you have proof that healing is possible, that joy is a choice, that kindness is strength. And they're not ready for that truth. So what do? They mock you, they belittle your dreams, they plant seeds of doubt, they project their pain onto your peace. But here is where your true power lies. You don't have to carry their projections. You are not responsible for their inability to love, their refusal to grow, or their choice to stay bitter. You're only responsible for one thing, keeping your light alive. It may flicker, it may grow dim in the storms, but never let it go out because of someone else's shadows. Sometimes we think that dimming ourselves will make us more accepted, more loved, more easy to handle. But what we don't realize is that we were never meant to be manageable. We were meant to be radiant, fearless, limitless. Yes, shining your light might make others uncomfortable, but staying small will make you miserable. You were not born to apologize for your existence. You were not created to tiptoe around fragile egos. You were meant to take up space with grace, to walk into rooms and change the temperature with your energy, to leave trails of kindness and courage wherever you go. And the world needs that version of you, the unapologetic one, the one who doesn't hide behind fear, the one who chooses love over bitterness, light over darkness. So when toxic people try to put out your fire, let it remind you of how brightly you burn. Let their attempts to silence you remind you how powerful your voice is. And let their discomfort with your joy remind you just how sacred it is. Letting go is one of the hardest things we as human beings are ever asked to do, especially when it involves people we once loved, trusted, or built dreams around. Toxic people don't just break your heart, they twist your spirit, confuse your identity, and make you believe that pain is the price you must pay to be loved. And because of that, we hold on. We hold on tightly. Sometimes out of habit, sometimes out of fear, and often because we still hope they will change. But let me ask you this, from one wounded healer to another, how long will you keep hurting yourself, hoping someone else will heal? There is nothing noble in staying where your soul is suffocating. There is no medal for being loyal to your own suffering. You do not have to keep drinking poison just because it once came in a cup labeled love. You see, healing begins when we stop trying to fix what keeps breaking us. It begins when we stop confusing loyalty with self-betrayal. Yes, forgiveness is beautiful. Yes, love is powerful. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and even for them is to walk away, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with peace. Peace that says, I choose me now. I choose my healing. I choose a life where I am no longer constantly apologizing for my boundaries, for my emotions, for existing. We live in a world that glorifies endurance. Stay strong, they say. hanging there. But nobody teaches us the strength it takes to release. To walk away from a parent who only knows how to manipulate. To say goodbye to a friend whose presence brings anxiety, not joy. To close the door on a partner whose words always cut deeper than they heal. And when we do let go, people question us. They say, but wasn't she your best friend? But he's still your father. But you've been together for years. As if time is the only measure of worth, as if pain becomes acceptable when it's familiar. But you, my dear, are allowed to outgrow the places that no longer fit your heart. You're allowed to shed the weight of relationships that anchor you to versions of yourself you've already outgrown. You're allowed to create distance, not because you hate them, but because you love yourself enough to stop shrinking. Letting go is not giving up, it's growing up. It's choosing growth over guilt. It's deciding that you no longer wish to set yourself on fire just to keep someone else warm. It's the radical, painful, liberating act of putting your well-being above your history. There will be grief in that process. Grief for the version of them you believed in. Grief for the love you thought you had. Grief for the years you spent hoping they'd see your worth. But healing begins with truth. And the truth is, you were never too hard to love. You were just trying to be loved by someone who couldn't even love themselves. There comes a time in life when you realize that your peace is not just a luxury, it is your responsibility. And if there is one thing toxic people are good at, it's stealing that peace, one tiny piece at a time. They do it with words that linger like poison, with silence that screams louder than any noise, with expectations that suffocate, and judgments that sting. But what's worse, we often hand them the keys to our peace because we don't yet know how sacred it is. Let me ask you something from the depths of my own journey. How many times have you made yourself smaller to fit into someone else's comfort zone? How many times have you said, I'm okay, just to avoid another conflict, another guilt trip, another exhausting explanation? You do it because you are kind, because you have a big heart, because you are taught to keep the peace, even if it costs you your own. But here's what I learned. Keeping the peace and keeping your peace are not the same thing. Keeping the peace often means staying silent in the presence of disrespect. It means tolerating mistreatment just to avoid drama. But keeping your peace, that's a sacred act of self-love. It's setting boundaries even when your voice shakes. It's saying no without explanation. It's walking away when your soul is being bruised, even if your heart is still attached. Peace is not passive. Peace is power. It's not just the absence of noise. It's the presence of clarity, safety, and self-respect. And in a world full of chaos, especially emotional chaos, that peace becomes your sanctuary. You deserve to wake up without dread. You deserve relationships where you don't feel like you're walking on eggshells. You deserve to exhale fully, to rest deeply, to laugh without looking over your shoulder. But to protect that peace, you must disappoint some people. You must make choices that others won't understand. You must let go of the idea that you owe anyone constant access to your mind, your time, or your heart. And that is not selfish, it is sacred. I remember the day I stopped answering calls that left me emotionally drained, the day I stopped over-explaining why I needed space, the day I stopped begging people to treat me right. That was the day I started reclaiming my peace. And I want you to know, your peace does not need permission. It needs protection. Toxic people will call you cold when you set boundaries. They will call you difficult when you stop enabling them. But remember, those who truly love you will celebrate your growth, not punish you for it. They will honor your peace because they see how hard you've worked to find it. So protect it, not just with walls, but with wisdom, not with anger, but with clarity. Let your peace be louder than their chaos, and let your calm be the revolution you carry inside your soul. In the journey of life, you will meet many sins, some who lift you and others who drain you. But remember this, your soul was never meant to live in the shadows of someone else's darkness. You are not here to shrink to fit in broken spaces. You are here to grow, to shine, to rise beyond the chaos. Let the toxic fall away like dead leaves in autumn, making space for the light to break through. You don't need to fight every battle, just choose yourself every single time. The most powerful decision you'll ever make is to protect your peace. Take care of yourself, keep moving forward, and stay connected with us.